Well, hello there, folks. Simon Dowling here, and welcome to episode 1 of Teaming with Possibility. Now, this is very exciting. It's teaming with possibility, in fact, because this is a brand new podcast. Even more than that, it's a video podcast, which means not only can you get this wherever you like to access your favorite podcasts, your podcast hub, as it were, but I am recording it to video, and it will also be accessible via the YouTube. So we're broadcasting all over the world. And this is what I like to think of as our pre-season edition, because it is currently November 2022, and as I stand here now, I'm thinking this is the first of a few episodes that I will create before we launch proper and get cracking in 2023. So I want to explore, I want to play, I want to experiment, see what happens, see what you, dear listener, dear viewer, think, and what is most useful in this format. But more than anything, I want to have some fun doing this. I want this to be teaming with possibility. But what are we doing this? Why am I recording this podcast? It really is, more than anything, an opportunity for me to explore together with you the ins and the outs, the highs and the lows of teaming. Because to me, one of the most fascinating things, the most fascinating aspect of all of my work is the dynamics of groups. How do you get groups of people, 2 or more people, to produce magic together? And it's not always as straightforward as you might like to think. In fact, for a lot of people, the experience of being part of a team, working in teams, can be downright frustrating. In fact, enough to lead them to say, you know what, I want elsewhere. So anyone who's worked with me before will know one of my favorite quotes comes from the longtime CEO of Citigroup. His name was Walter Wriston. And he said, the person who figures out how to harness the collective genius of his or her organization is going to blow the competition away. You know what I really like about that, aside from that beautiful expression he uses, collective genius? It's the recognition that there is a huge amount of latent potential in our people when they work together as a team, when they really work out what it means to collaborate. Huge potential in that. And yet, there's also an acknowledgement that, my goodness, it's tricky. It is hard to work out how to make it all just hum. And that's really the core of the work that I love to do. I'm a facilitator, I'm a team coach, I'm an author, I'm a speaker who helps people build teams that hum, to harness the collective potential, to maybe unleash the collective potential of their teams and their organizations. And that's what we are going to explore together throughout this series, this podcast. In today's episode, I actually want to start with a really core question, and that is, what does it take fundamentally to truly become a team in the first place? And let me maybe start this with a question to you. The question's this: are you building a team, or are you in fact building a group of individual players who, might be willing to be nice to one another, play nicely together, but at its core, they are a group of individuals? And I think that's an essential question for anyone who's in a leadership role, who is working as part of a team, who is seeking to pull a group of people together to work on a project or an initiative. It brings us to the core question that I want to explore with you in this episode, and it is the role of commitment in teams. As you see, at the heart of every great team, I reckon, lies one key thing, and it is a commitment to being a team in the first place, or a commitment to teaming. And there's a subtle difference between those two terms. A team we talk about when we think of an intact team that's been assembled perhaps for the longer term to work on a concrete project, a concrete piece of work, a concrete stream of work. And so there's something more fixed about that as a team. Whereas teaming is perhaps more, it's the verb, right? It's the action of coming together as a group of people in order to perhaps solve a problem, to respond to an issue, to create something, but it might be quite fleeting. It might be quite temporal in its existence. And so this idea of teaming, I reckon, is one of the most core skills, core capabilities of the modern organisation, where so much of what we do does depend on being able to connect all the different parts of our rich and wonderful galaxy. So whenever you come together as a team, whether it is as an intact team or to perform a project, to do a piece of work that requires us to work together, it has to start with a core commitment, because there's a big difference between a group of people who are configured as a team versus a group of people who make a conscious choice to be a team. That distinction, configured as a team. So someone says, I've got an org chart that shows the structure of this team. Well, that might be the structure on paper, but does it really represent where people's hearts and minds lie around this thing we've done, which is to consciously come together and harness the collective genius of this group? Now, if you think about it, most individuals in most organisations and workplaces sign up for a job. So they might, perhaps it's a project, but they might come in and we ask them questions about whether they're suited to the job. We assess them for their fit culturally. But fundamentally, we're looking to task them with a particular job or role. And if you were to ask them, do you sign up to being part of a team? Most people are going to say, yeah, sure, I'm a team player. You don't meet many people. I don't know. Have you met many people who say, I'm not a team player? No, don't like people. Please don't put me in that kind of environment. We might try and understand how much of a team player they are, but most people would say, yeah, sure, I understand that working in an organisation requires me to play in a team. But let's go one step further and let's ask ourselves, do you sign up for what it is we are trying to achieve by working as a team? And that's not the same thing. That's not the same thing as saying we're hiring you for just the work you can do. Instead, what we're now doing is saying we're hiring you for the contribution you will make to our very special, very precious thing, very precious dynamic, very precious bit of magic called a team. If you're sitting there right now going, what is he talking about? Isn't this overcomplicating things? Therein lies perhaps the first question, which is, when we think of teaming, what are we actually committing to when we create a team? And how easily does your answer to that roll off the tongue? Does your team have this conversation? Because when I think about this, I think of, well, if we're going to play as a team, that means we could be committing to challenging the way we see things, challenging the status quo, challenging each other, not letting any one particular viewpoint dominate, because that's the power of the team. We can harness this diversity of thinking, harness the fact that we've got different experiences and different perspectives and different insights, and allow that to yield a better outcome. That's one of our commitments to working as a team. Or perhaps another one is to ensure that every decision that we make has a deep connection and understanding to our customer at its centre. And so what we assume in the context of our team is that no one of us can hold the perfect understanding of that customer. So if we're serious about that, it depends on us as a team to kind of wrestle with that, to challenge, to delight with, hang on, what would the customer's response to this? What's the customer's need? What's the customer look like in 3 years' time from now? Perhaps that's one of them. Perhaps it's guarding against complacency, that we want to ensure that as a team we hold ourselves accountable to the things that could be, not just to ticking over the things that are. And we need the team to do that. Or perhaps it's that we want to be able to learn really fast from one another's experiences. Like I could be, bumbling along for the next 12 months and trying things out and learning from the things that I do and the things that don't work out so well. And that learning accumulates and hopefully makes me a better person by the end of the 12 months. But what if we said, you could multiply that. You put 10, 12 or more people together into a team. And if we're learning from each other's experiences, each of us is growing at a rate of 10x, 12x what we would be able to do working on our own. So that's the purpose of coming together as a team. Or perhaps another one is that we are committed to truly building connectedness between us, relationships between us, because we understand that's not just the currency of getting things done, currency of being able to cooperate quickly and easily and to embrace the challenges, the trust we have for one another. But you go one step further than that and you say, because it's at the core of a team that feels a deep sense of belonging and identity. And if we get that right, imagine how strong this team will be because of the human experience we are all having. So I could keep thinking of what are the core commitments that you and your team make when you are choosing to team, and how clearly stated are those? What are the top 3 or 4 core objectives of teaming for us that we will hold ourselves to, and that we will hire for, and we will train ourselves for, and we will obsess about? I like to use that word obsess because I think it really does capture the energy of what we're trying to get to here. Now, that conversation is going to be a lot easier or a lot harder depending on a couple of things. One of which will be, what are people's experiences of being a team in the first place? Like, if you're listening to this now and going, this guy is off his tree, is it possible that you have not yet been part of a team that has really tapped the value of what I'm talking about, that really hasn't understood those possibilities that get unlocked when you get people really centered in and committed to the idea of teaming? Is that possible? For me, I definitely have had a couple of great experiences of teaming that have become the benchmark. They have shaped all the other teaming I've done since. And one of them that I talk about a lot is my experience in improvised theatre, because when I worked and trained in improv, one of the beautiful things about it was that it absolutely put the idea of teamwork, in fact we use the term ensemble, at the heart of it. The idea that working together as a collective is the whole point here. It's very different from stand-up comedy, where you might have the individual performer getting on stage, being the funny one, pulling out their shtick. It is inbuilt into the system of improvisation when you work as an ensemble that it is an act of co-creation. And so improvisers would work hard to learn the art and the skill of co-creation, but in particular learning the art and skill of co-creating stuff with people you don't necessarily know, because often you'd be doing that with complete strangers who would come from the other side of the world in order to be part of an improv festival. Or in fact, how do you co-create under pressure when things are going wrong? How do you let go of your desire to control and steer and fix a scene or a performance when things aren't going the way you would want them to? So all sorts of wonderful nuances around the act of co-creating that I really had the opportunity to discover through improvisation. So I wonder, maybe that's a great conversation for your team, which is, when did we catch the team bug? When did you individually have the opportunity to be part of a team that really understood or really tapped into the potential of teaming, and you learnt something from it? So to inspire and perhaps create awareness of each other's stories around that. What a great set of questions also to ask people. If you're interviewing for a role, if you're recruiting and you're wanting to bring someone on and you want to know what is their mental model around teaming in the first place, which is one of the challenges here. We have different stories in our head of what teaming can be like. Because heck, if the answer to that question is you've got people in your team who think teamwork, when I hear that word, triggers off images of people falling backwards off tables and doing trust falls, or walking each other blindfolded through a set of mousetraps, and that for them is what teamwork is about, no wonder they just want to get back to their desks and do their job. So that's one thing that's going to make this easier or harder, is the kind of existing experiences and mental models within your team around what teaming actually can be about. And have they even discovered that? The second thing that's going to make a big difference is whoever the senior leader is in that team, the boss of the team, if that's you, if that's someone else, their assumptions about what they really want that team to be, what they want for the team, is going to be critical here. In other words, there's probably two really simple ways that we can talk about the way leaders see a team. One way is a leader sees a team as a group of individuals who are my resource in order to get the job done. So it's my job to allocate the resource, to steer the resource, to direct the resource, to reward and motivate the resource. But essentially, I'm almost like the puppet master of all of that. I'm the coordinator. I'm the one that has to assemble all of that in order to produce great results. But you can hear in that the theme is control. The theme is, this is my show, and everyone else is here to serve that show. Which is very different from the leader who says, no, my job is to enable this group of people to collectively do amazing stuff. In other words, they're not a resource. They are a group of people who collectively have a genius between them, and it is far greater than what I could come up with on my own, or what I could achieve by simply trying to direct the traffic to steer people towards a particular outcome. So how can I instead start to think about, do I really want this team to take ownership, to share ownership, to step in and say, this is our team, and what we're here to do is ours to do. And you hear leaders talk a lot about accountability. We can talk about that, I think, in another episode. But really, if you want your team to take accountability, you've got to start with the question of, have I allowed them, have I invited them, have I empowered them to take ownership? And ownership starts with the question of, make this your own. And that takes a bit of time. Again, if there's people in your team who aren't either accustomed to taking ownership for their work because they're used to being managed, led towards an outcome, or if you've got people in your team who can't even work out what that means for them, like, am I up for that in the first place? Do I buy into that? Is my heart in it? Or did I really just rock up for a quiet and easy 9-to-5 job where I can just tick over my technical expertise? Again, those kinds of mindsets are going to play heavily on what kind of dynamic we can, hope to achieve in our teams. So the starting question I'll often begin any engagement when I work with a leadership team might be is to that senior leader. What kind of team are you actually shooting for here? And tell me a little bit about what that means. And in particular, tell me what it means for you. To what extent does this mean you are going to have to get more comfortable with letting go, more comfortable with allowing people to take risks, more comfortable with letting other people take the lead? Because that's all about leadership, by letting go, creating the context for this team to step in and become much more powerful than any individual sitting at the table. Whew. Lots of food for thought in that. But here's the main question I think I want to leave you with today. And maybe this is something to be thinking about, have a conversation with your team. What do each of us really think teaming is about? Like, why be assembled as a team? Is it just a convenient way of kind of organizing us on a reporting structure? Or is it something more than that? And maybe let's get super clear about what those top 2, 3, maybe 4 objectives are. The things that we have to be able to tap into through the act of teaming. Have a think about that. And then that's a great starting point for us to continue to play with the question of, all right, now how do we make it happen? What are the challenges along the way? What are the pitfalls that we're all going to encounter? Because teaming is tricky. We're talking about human beings, and heck, human beings are strange. I'm strange to you, you're strange to me. We're all strange to one another. And you know what? That's what makes us really wonderful. That's what makes us so exciting, is that diversity. I hope that's useful. This is episode 1 in the pre-season edition of Teaming with Possibility. I can't wait to keep playing with you in this, and please shoot through your comments and thoughts about what you would like to see me explore in future episodes of this. Stand by for our next one. That was fun. Cool. Okay. Bye for now.